been a few months. Haven't had a lot of time to work on the 818. Taking care of some projects around the house and trying to finish up my 65 Mustang. I believe the last video I made, I was working on the custom headlights for the car. Working on the nose. It's still up there, but the more I looked at it, the more I worked on it, I realized how small and cramped the 818 is. I got really concerned that if I was making body modifications, not on the frame, that I was going to go to put my body on and realize that it wouldn't fit. It was hitting the frame. I was going to have to start modifying the frame. It wasn't something I was overly thrilled to do, so I decided to bring the frame on over from storage, and that way I could fit the body on it and make my modifications checking against the body. Unfortunately, as you can see, I've got a very small garage. Not a lot of room here to work on a body and have the frame in here. So to be able to do this, I'm going to have to get the car to where it will move under its own power so it can go in and out. I can pull it in, fit some things, make sure I'm happy with them, pull it out, make a mess with fiberglass, Bondo, pull the car back in. So when I picked it up, it was in a roller stage, so all the suspension was done. The motor and transmission were in. The brakes had fluid in them, but it didn't feel like they'd been bled. The clutch needed a master cylinder and a slave cylinder. The cooling needed to be filled up, and the shifter needed to be hooked up. So the first thing I decided to look at was the shifter, because I read pretty much every thread on the forum and count on one hand the number of people who actually use this stock shifter that comes with the car. It's got forward-facing levers. First of all, the whole thing's made out of plastic. It's got forward-facing levers, which means the cables run up through the firewall, around the steering column, all the way around the side of the car, travel out the back, and then come out back here by where the transmission was sitting until very recently. It's probably 100 inches of cable with two massive bends in it, and so it creates a really poor shifting effect. Once you even get it to hook up, I'll show you the bracket, how many modifications I had to make to it in a minute. So I got the shifter hooked up. The bracket is right here, and as you can see, it's very ugly because I've had to grind and weld on it a bunch. I had to move it this way towards the end of the transmission, about 1/2 inch to clear that little sensor there, and then this right here, that the cable that does the in and out motion connects to, was straight up, so it was sticking 2 inches further away from the transmission, and there was no way the cable could connect. So I had to, once I moved it forwards to clear that sensor, I had to bend the whole thing over, and you can see it better if I get you a picture from this end. I had to roll it over to get the hole right here closer to the transmission so you could actually hook your cable up to here, and that gave it an in and out motion. There's another cable that makes a huge turn this way and then points this way, and it attaches to a lever that hangs down and allows you to rotate. So I did get it all hooked up after modifying the bracket, and shifting was quite scary. A ton of force to go up and down, so first, second, third, fourth, fifth, right? A ton of force, and so when you're coming straight down, it's not an issue. First to second's very easy, but when you try to go back up to third, you tend to blow right through neutral back into first before you get a chance to go over to third. So I am going to be changing the shifter. I've ordered a shifter from a second generation MR2. It'll have the cables that exit directly out the back and eliminate the two huge bends. And I'll also very likely put some kind of bell crank on it to eliminate the big turn for the side-to-side motion, and I'll let a bell crank do the side-to-side motion. Once I made a decision that I wasn't going to keep the shifter, I went ahead and pulled the transmission. I'm going to have it sent over to the transmission shop to install a limited slip. One of the few things I'm not brave enough to attempt on my own is transmission work. Now the transmission's out, the motor will be the next thing to come out. A couple of things I need to do to it is I'm going to put AC in the car, so I got to get to the front so that I can modify the brackets, mount an AC compressor up front and get the belts routed. That would be very difficult to do with it sitting up against the firewall. I'm also just going to go through it, make sure the previous owner didn't miss anything, make sure the compression's good, do a leak down on it. I'll take a scope and look at the cylinders and make sure they look okay. And then while I've got it off, I'll probably go ahead and powder coat the intake manifold. Anything that's red, I'm probably going to go ahead and powder coat. Plan on having not red of any fashion on the car, and very likely the highlight color will be orange, which wouldn't look great with the red, which means the brake calipers are also going to get repowder coated as well. So the engine will be coming out real soon, so that I can take care of those things. In the meantime, I decided the next project to tackle would be wiring. The previous owner had a complete harness from the donor car, and for a while I toyed with the idea of using it. I've also got an Infinity Box wiring system, which I got from another kit car builder who decided not to use it, that I thought about using. And I was really leaning towards the Infinity Box, but I want AC, and this car is so small that I can only fit, based on my measurements, the Vintage Air Gen 3 Mini, and the Gen 3 air conditioner doesn't work with the Infinity Box integrated module, so the Infinity Box wouldn't have really been controlling anything except for my lights, maybe, if I had used it, and I thought that was probably overkill for an Infinity Box system. So what I wound up doing was buying a Coach Controls, a Coach 1 kit. It's a pretty nice feature set. It's a more traditional, it's not like the Infinity that's CAN bus, it's a traditional wiring system, but it's got the relays already built in, it's got timers built in, it supports a lot of really cool features. It's got a ambient light sensor that you can mount, so it supports automatic on-off headlights. It supports one-touch window up and down. It has relays already built in for the lights and the fan and the HVAC unit, so you don't have to have a bunch of little relays hanging all over your car. And so I started trying to lay it out. I haven't cut anything yet. I'm thinking I'm going to mount it here behind the passenger seat. My seats are on order. As soon as they get here, I'll make sure there's room for that. But I think I want to mount it here. I can't mount it under the passenger's dash because the HVAC will be there, and I really don't want it behind the console because that's a really hard area to work on. There's certainly no room in the passenger footwell for it. I mean the driver's footwell with the pedals, and there's no room in the kick panel there. So that's my current plan, is to put it right there unless I get my seats in there and realize there's just no way it'll sit. So a little bit about this Coach wiring system. When you get it, it comes with just a bunch of bags of wires. And they're loosely related on what they do in the bag. But what I did was I took all the wires out, I spooled each one up, put a little tie wrap on it so that each little spool would stay nice and neat, and then I grouped it into what I considered little mini harnesses. So I did one for the center console, one for the front of the car, one in the rear of the car, one for the engine compartment, or the front compartment, and one for the back compartment. And you can see I've kind of routed the front of the car one here. What I would do is I take all the wires and I just electrical tape them together about every 18 inches so you get a nice little harness that routes easily together. So this one, for instance, will connect to the panel here. It runs through the sidewall here down under the cooling, through this well here, comes out here. The big wire breaks off to feed the electric fans. And then the headlights come up, and there's a bunch of wire loop there because the brights and the parking, you have to come in, connect to the passenger, and then daisy chain off to the driver. So I had to leave plenty of extra there for that splice. It'll all get cleaned up once I get the body attachment points on and figure out exactly how long they need to be. So I routed most of the, let's see, this one here was mostly door stuff. Your door lights, your door switches, your power windows, and then blinkers and wipers. And then, and once again, everything has to come over here and then daisy chain back all your stuff that runs in series for the door. So we got all that loosely laid out, and I'm going to pick up with the wiring. Next chance I get out here, I will run the rear of the car, the rear lights, the brake lights, and then I'll run the engine compartment, the AC, the battery, the fuel pump, all that kind of stuff. And then I will break out the factory harness, get the ECU out, and start wiring up the engine harness. Hopefully it won't be able to, open my mouth, shoot myself in the foot, but hopefully 2 or 3 weeks I can have it wired, which means I'll probably have it wired before I get my transmission back. That's my goal. So as soon as I get the transmission back, I'll be ready for a test fire.